Well, again, everybody, this is Steve coming to you with another video about writing and the art of it. This one's going to be more process and procedure than actually some of the actual world building, because at this point you should have been, you should have completely built your characters, you should have completely built your world, to the point where you're ready to go. Now, some of it may still be exploring, where you've got the structure of it, because I like to do this. Sometimes when I start a story, I know where I'm starting, where I'm ending, but I have no idea where I'm going. So some of it is exploratory, and that's fine. If you want to explore, you can explore. If you already have it planned out in advance, planning it out in advance is fine. That's not a problem. If you're one of these people that likes to have that story fully written before it's actually fully written, and when I say fully written, I'm talking in like the notes and the summary and everything, that's cool too. So it just depends on what you want to do, but that's something that you have to learn, what you want to do and how you want to do it when you start out. Some of it you may learn along the way. Some, you may start out one way and change as you go along, but that's fine. As long as you're doing it for fun and it's easy, it's constructive, you get good quality, you can improve yourself, that's what counts. And one of the big things I say about being a good author is write, and write a lot, because the more you write, the better you get. It's like going to the gym. Do you go to the gym, lift 20 pounds a couple of times and walk away and, hey, you're Hulk Hogan or Arnold Schwarzenegger or something like that? Oh, heck no. You go out every day, 5 times a week, maybe 7 times a week. Hopefully not 7, because your body needs to rest a little. But you have your arm day, you have your leg day, you have your what is it? Not keto, but I'm not a gym guy, so I can't think of what this is, but it's basically where you work up your metabolism and get yourself burning a lot of calories and stuff. But anyways, the thing with writing is, writing is a perishable skill. If you don't use it and use it regularly, it will atrophy, and you'll have to then go back in and work to regain everything that you've lost. So it gets better with use, it gets better with practice, it gets better with time, and it gets worse if you let it, sit by and do nothing. And the older you get, the harder it gets. That's one thing that you've seen in my other videos where I'm having trouble remembering the names of my own characters. Sometimes I'll remember them and have no problem remembering all the details, and other times I couldn't probably tell you who they were. Tell you who they were if their name was shoved in my face. It's just one of the fun things getting old. One other thing I want to do real quick before I forget about this. If you notice on the last 2 videos, I probably blew up your speakers. I did finally figure out what the problem was. One of the things about my audio system, apparently, is that my browser can control my microphone level, and Google Meet, which we use through work, is controlling that. Like, I'll move this up, and the next thing you know, it goes down to 15-20% and stuff, and then everybody's having to blow their speakers up trying to hear me, and then I turn around and jack it up and blow their speakers up in the other direction until Google Meet goes, nope, we're going to lower your volume, and then I'm down to back to sounding like some church mouse whispering in the corner, and oh no, I can't hear you, and that kind of thing. But anyways, I figured I'd let you know I figured out what the problem is. Yay Google, right? But yeah, if you ever do videos or voice chat or anything like that, you're going to have to think about that, because that's going to be something that can be done. Google Meet, if you're having problems, can also, well, not just Google Meet, but your browser in general, can shut your sound off. So you're going to want to watch out for that too. So anyways, back to what I was saying. One of the things I like to do when I'm first starting a story, which is why you see LibreOffice here, which is essentially just a different version of OpenOffice. Same code base, but anyways, What I like to do when I first start out, and this is setting up the document, this is up to you if you want to do it this way. The first thing I do is I set my tab limit, which you would do up here. And I'll drag that over right there, which is about 5 spaces in. The idea here is, let's just say, just for fun, let's say I want to do, oops, there. Just being funny with this. But anyways, by setting the tab like this, if you notice, it goes in 5 spaces. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Actually, I'm in 7 spaces. It should be 5 spaces, so I'm probably going to back that up to there. Okay, that's 6 spaces. Now it's 4. But anyways, usually I set it at about 5 spaces. But yeah, you just do it like that. There we go, 5 spaces. Okay. What you want to do when you're writing is you want to have an indent like this. And you know, if you have dialogue, it's not going to be, you know, you're not really going to see that unless you have like long sections of dialogue. If it's a short dialogue, like, you know, hey Joe, said Larry, you know, something like that. All of your lines are going to be indented. Part of the reason behind this, and there's a lot of, because like I use Smashwords, but I've also done Amazon, Barnes & Noble, some others like that, and I publish professionally in print. And one of the things that publishers like, regardless of who they are, is they like the indent. The indent makes it easier to read. It also formats nicely. Generally, they don't like, unless it's, well, certain publishers, when it comes to print, do like this, but most of them don't. Or if they, or they're not impartial, but they don't care either way. Is they will actually, some of them will say we want justified. What justified is you're still going to have your indent, but what it is it adds extra space into this line so that you don't have this and then this little space over here. This Y would butt up against this side here, and then the difference would be made up in extra space along through here, either extra spaces or just extra space between the characters. Now, one other thing you can do with these, and I can go backspace, which takes away that auto left space, center, and then I will do something like this. Now, if you notice up here, it's 12 point right here. What I'll do is I'll highlight that, set it to 16 point, and then I will also bold it. Now, some publishers will say don't bold that. For me, I like it because it's nice to have. It's good for keep, you know, like making the title stand out. If they're okay with it, leave it. One of the other things I've done before is I will do like the color red. That's not good red, but you get the idea. And then I will do my name below that. That will be in 12-point font. Sometimes I will have that in black. Something like this, and usually not bolded. Because what you want is you want the name of the story to pop. One of my favorite colors for this is blue. Let's see if I can get the right blue on here. That's green. This isn't showing me good colors. Let's try that one. Yeah, kind of not the blue I'm after. I'm after a dark blue, but you know, I'll do like blue here. Generally, though, the title will be red, and then I will say like over here I will have prologue. Prologue's going to be the same font size as your regular story. You want to center that. A lot of times you want to bold that. because you want that to pop. Smash words for now when you're doing like smash words, they don't want any color on the page. They want everything black and white, which is fine. Bold, they don't care about. The colors, they do. But for like when I'm writing, just for my benefit, what I will do is I will turn that dark blue. I think that's the dark blue I'm after. Nope, it's green. Yeah, these colors are kind of hard to read. I think that's the blue, isn't it? Dark blue. There we go. That's... Yeah, it's still not showing up as dark blue. Maybe light blue? Go like that. That'll do. Anyways, the idea here... the colors aren't working for me for some reason. But anyways, what I'll do is I'll take the title and I'll make it like red, so the title stands out, and then the color or the chapters I will do like blue. And that, again, that's a writing aid. That's not something you actually need when you're published. It's just a writing aid. And let's say we come down here. And it's the same color of blue. It needs to be a lot darker blue, but I can't seem to get it darker blue. There's the one I'm looking for. Aha, I found it. Oops. There we go. Okay, anyways. Then I'll do chapter 1, and I will start writing from there. Now, one of the things I do, and you don't have to do this, but one of the things I do when I'm writing, and I tried this before, where instead of chapter 1, chapter 2, stuff like that, I did like chapter 1, something like this. Or I would skip that entirely and just call it that. Just that was the chapter name. What I do, though, is just from practical experience, I've found that writing the story with chapter names, at least for me, restricts me way too much on what I'm writing, because I feel like I'm beholden to that chapter title. And trying to come up with chapter titles after the fact is hard. Just like coming up with one before the chapter is easy, but then you're kind of beholden to that chapter title. So I just do chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. And if that's how you are, don't worry about it. There's a lot of people like that. The ones that can do named chapters and make them work are a special breed of people, in my opinion. Because I can't make it work, or it just makes the story too difficult, and therefore it stops being fun. So I went and stopped doing that. And I just do, like chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. The other thing I do is when I'm writing the story, I will write the prologue with the title, and however many pages that is long. My prologues are usually between 3 pages and 7. I think the longest is 12. And the thing with a prologue is, the prologue is kind of like your book description, only in more detail with more volume to it. What you want to do with a prologue is it needs to be a teaser to the rest of the story. Generally, my theory with a prologue is it's either the appetizer and intro to the main story, like Clive Cussler did this with one of his books. To give background to the story, he wrote this whole mini book. It was essentially almost a novelette. It was pretty good, pretty beefy. Told the story of the Russian crown jewels. I don't remember which book it was, but told the story of the Russian crown jewels and how they were lost, and what happened to them, and the time around the time of the Bolshevik Revolution and stuff like this, and just basically set the story for the main story, which is what the prologue's there to do. It's to, like, if it's your first book, it sets the story. If it's like your second, third, fourth book, it might be setting that particular story in the series, or it could be Like I've seen people do prologues where the prologue is kind of a refresher of where have we come from and where are we at. It depends on which works better for you. On my Off-World Chronicles, I had a couple of them where they were kind of a flashback to bring you up to speed and kind of fill in things that weren't covered by the previous story, so that the new story had additional content, so that you kind of, when you walked into it, it wasn't like you walked into the room and surprise party. You actually walked in knowing that surprise party was going to be there. You just didn't know the details of who, why, or for what, or who it was for, or stuff like that. But you knew the party was going to be there. For me, one of the things I like to do, and I like to do it this way because I've seen others do this, and Clive Cussler's done this a lot. And this is what, so I kind of do the same thing as he did. And there's the others who have done that. It's not just him, but he's one that does it a lot. And really, this is I think a very popular way to do a prologue, for good reason, because it's a very good way to do a prologue. Is when you do the prologue, you're telling the story from a different perspective for an event that is not going to happen right away in the book. It's going to happen half to 2/3 of the way down. I think the earliest I've had a prologue connect with the main story is about a quarter of the way in. Typically, it's within the 50 to 75% range of the story before the prologue clicks. And one of the other things about that is when you do that, you're encouraging people to keep reading to find out what the connection is between the story and that prologue. So it gives them, that little sampler plate to want to dive in and go deeper and go further, and just one more chapter to find out what that is. And then when you get them there, they're like, oh great, we're here and this is all this cool stuff. So they keep reading it all the way to the end, because you want to keep them sucked in right from the start, or you want to suck them in at the start and keep them there the whole way. But anyways, when getting into the chapter 1, what I will do is I will set the chapter title here to mark the delineation between the prologue and the first chapter. That's important, because when you're writing it, you don't want this part, the prologue, to feel like chapter 1. You accidentally label it that, and then everybody later on is like, okay, I'm confused. You want that distinction here. And one other thing too is with prologues, you can have multiple storylines in a prologue. I've done that. Other authors have done that. If you have 2 or more events, don't go too wild with it, because the prologue is a sampler plate. You're not there to have a full meal off a sampler plate. You're there to get a taste of what's coming. So that's all that really should be, is a taste of what's coming. But yeah, I've had it where, and it's rare that I've needed that, but there are some situations where I've needed it, that I will tell 2 different stories for 2 different parts of the novel in the prologue. First one person's story, and then somebody else's story. And again, they're brief summaries. They're essentially short stories that hint towards something further on in the novel that is something that will catch people's interest, and it will hook them and make them want to stay for the whole book. But yeah, I'd say you can do up to 3 of those before you start boring the reader, because then it just becomes a short story anthology if you keep going. But you want, like I said, you want to give them a sampler. You want to hook them with the prologue, and when you want it to be something further down the book. Even if you haven't written that, if you have that pictured in your mind and you know roughly what's there, write it. Write your story, or then go in and write your story. And if you write that scene and you realize the prologue no longer matches, go back and rewrite the prologue. Because as long as you're working on it, you can change any part of that story you want to. It's when that thing, it's when they go, you're published. Now you've got a problem. But as long as it's still in development, as long as it's still in rough draft and it's not or middle draft or review draft or whatever, you can still go back and make changes. Until they consider that final, no, you can make changes. So don't be afraid to do something and then have to go back and rewrite it. I've had stories... Gold Rush is a great example of this. I had to go back and rewrite that story 3 times. The initial time plus 2 rewrites. Not go back and write it 3 times, but I had to write it a total of 3 times. I wrote it the first time gutted about 50% of the story, wrote it the second time, gutted about 60% of the story, wrote it the third time, and finally got it right, where I was happy with it. And if you have to do that, go for it. You want that story to be exactly the way you want it to be, and to where it feels perfect, the story flows, you've got everything, nothing feels clunky, etc. like that. But anyways, going into chapter 1. Hey, look, another rabbit trail. No, just kidding. No, once you're into chapter 1, what I like to do is just write the story. I don't put any more chapter markers in there for the whole rest of the story. And you're probably thinking, wait a second, I don't remember you having no chapter markers for the rest of the story. That's the final draft. What I do is I will go in and I will write the whole story from beginning to end, all the way down to the epilogue. And what I will do is I will then come back once I am satisfied with it. Once I have done all my edits, I will chapter the rest of the book, which means I will add chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4. And what I do is I will, and I can't really show it good on here. I don't think that's the one. Might be this one, I don't know. Okay, yeah, this one's not right because I don't have the right setup on it. I don't have multiple pages, but basically there's an option down here that'll allow you to go into a exploded view where you have pages side by side, and I'll run them 3 or 4 across, usually 4 across, and I will zoom out, because when I'm doing it like this, I've got, I'm old. I have trouble reading small text, so I blow it up so I can see it really, really good. And then what I do when I chapter it is I will set it to that side-by-side mode and zoom out so that it's like 4 pages across, and then I count in roughly 6 pages. And I say roughly because it's not going to be exactly 6 pages every single time. But what I'll do is I'll go to like 6 pages, and then I find a scene break, and I'll put like chapter 2. Count roughly 6 pages from there, chapter 3. Sometimes I've done 5 pages, sometimes I've done 7 or 8. Because I don't like to split chapter, I don't like to drop a chapter in the middle of a scene unless I think I absolutely need to. Like if I got a really long scene and the only way I'm getting that chapter in there is if I split that scene in half, then I'll toss that in there. Otherwise I wait for a scene break. But usually I like to keep it about 6 pages. 6 of these regular pages, not like novel pages, because one of these pages will come out to about, I think, 2.5 regular novel size pages. So that's the rough number. It varies. Depends on what your final print size is. And if you're ebook, it doesn't really matter. It'll just be 6 of your editor pages. Also, as a small aside, you don't have to use LibreOffice for this. I prefer LibreOffice, but there are other good editing systems out there for doing this. There's plugins like you can use Grammarly. I'm not a big fan of Grammarly because Grammarly corrects a lot of stuff that I don't want it to correct, because I want it to have that style to it, and that kind of, it's like, well, that's bad English. Well, that's the whole purpose. It's supposed to be bad English because that's the way the scene's playing out. But some people, they want the Grammarly in there. They want that perfect English. So you can put Grammarly plugins in. You can use other editors. I forget what the other one is, but it's popular among writers. If you go out to a writers group, they'll probably recommend it to you. It's kind of like LibreOffice or OpenOffice, but it's specifically made for writers. But anyways, that little aside there. And yes, if you know me, I'm a big one about rabbit trails. Anyways, what I'll do is, I'll go in here and I'll do my dialogue, and so there you go. And like when you're writing it initially, you can just, make it one continuous story with scene breaks and stuff like that, no chapters, and then get down here and it's like that. Chapter color. You jerk. Didn't want to give me the color I wanted. Oh, that's why. Now it gave me the color I wanted. Okay, I think. Looks purplish. There he is. Okay. Anyways, there's your epilogue. And then you come in here, and what I will do with this is a lot of times I will go like this, and I will capture that much of it. This is kind of a cool cheat trick for when you're actually chaptering. As you come down here to chapter 2, chapter 3, etc., like that. And it's just a quick and speedy way to chapter your thing. And you can, like I say, you can zoom out to where pages are like this big enough to see where your well, that's 45. That's a little smaller than I work with, but it's just enough to see where your chapter breaks are, and you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, chapter break. Okay, chapter here, stuff like that. Let me zoom that back in now. Oop, wrong way. Beep beep. Wrong direction. Oops, too big. There it is. Anyways. And you come down here and you chapter that in. Of course, when you get down to the end of your story, even if you don't have your other chapters in the middle, epilogue is another delineation in your story. Epilogues are like prologues. They don't necessarily need to be there. I have stories where there are no prologues and no epilogues, or there's no prologue or there's no epilogue, but there is one, there is the other. There are delineations. Epilogue is used to tidy up a story where ending the story as it is does not fit. Like going back to Off-World Chronicles. And if you haven't read the series yet, I'm going to give you a little spoiler on the ending of book 7, but not that big of a deal. Anyways, in book 7, they get to the end of the race. The race is won. And as far as I'm concerned, at that point, the main story has ended. The rest after that is epilogue, which is just basically you're tidying up your papers and getting ready for the end of class, in a sense. This is basically housekeeping at this point. Like in, book 7, Journey's End, Simon returns. Nothing makes sense. He thinks he's been hallucinating, but then he meets Ari and Trevor and realizes he hadn't. And he's like, "Oh, hey, I actually was there. This is great." And then they're like, "Yeah, hey, we got a story to tell you." And like I say, it's housekeeping. It's taking and cleaning up all the things that would not fit in the normal story. Because epilogues have a different feel to them than what the regular story does. And as you write more, you'll learn that they have this kind of like if you've ever watched like Avengers Endgame or any of the Marvel movies, they always have that kind of after movie scene. That's kind of the same idea. It's a little bit of house cleaning. It's a very short story. Epilogues should not be that big. I think the largest I've had was 6 pages, just because it was a lot to tell. But it's house cleaning. 1 to 2 pages is good. 6 pages is a little long. 12 pages, you really should probably spin it off into another book, So at that point, you're getting, or you should have that as something that you clean up in the main story itself. But yeah, 4 to 6 pages is not bad. I did, I think 6 pages. Yeah, 6 pages on Journey's End. On my Earthfleet books, they were generally 4 to 6 pages. And with the epilogues, you can have multiple stories, because if you have multiple storylines you got to tidy up, then you can have multiple stories in the epilogue. But again, they are short scenes, they're short stories that tidy up the story. Don't get into too much detail with these. You're basically closing things out like Dark Earth. One of the things I covered there is when Dutch and Pendleton return to Earth. Basically, what did they walk into? What's some of the stuff that's going on in the galaxy? Not a lot of detail on it, just, like, well, so-and-so did this and so-and-so did that. And there's dialogue and there's narrative, and you're basically just, like, what happened to the Razcor? What happened to the galaxy? Well, the Razcor wasn't in that one. It was Dark Earth. But in that one, it's kind of like, okay, what happened to this? What happened to that? Who went and did what? Did so-and-so go live happily ever after? And so forth and so on. That's essentially what that is it's kind of the happily ever after. Like if you had like a Prince Charming story, he gets the girl at the end of the book. The epilogue's like, they go up to Winsome Castle, and the Dowager Queen or whatever, she says no to their marriage, so they elope and go to a different kingdom and get married and live happily ever after. Something like that. Just kind of a real quick wrap-up of everything that's gone on. And, and then after that's done, then you can do your... and you're done. Just put that in. Bold color. And you're done. Now, one other thing I like to do is down here at the bottom in the footer. Oops. Come here, you. Okay, add the footer. Now, what I do is I gotta remember how to do this. I don't do this too often. Trying to remember where it's at in here. Oh, page number, right there. Okay. I was looking right at it. Like I say, I don't do that one very often. That's usually just when I'm first setting it up. But then set that on the right side. And then every page from then on will have page numbers. So if I go up to here, goes to page 2, scroll down to the bottom, say page 2. And then what this does is this is really good, because if you want to, say, go to another page, which is Control-G, I can just say page 1, and it jumps me to page 1. So that's good for navigating around the story. You can use Find to navigate around the story quickly, to find things if you know what they said or what the text is or whatever. When you format this, though, for publishing, what I like to do is I will save a work copy that's like this. Then I will come in later for like Smashwords and some of the others, which they say no colors, no fonts over 16, standard font should be 12, and no page numbers. I will go in here and I will delete footer, which takes out a... Darn it, I didn't see that. Yeah, see, there's another spot right there. Again, I don't do that very often, so I was trying to remember how to do that. But yeah, you have to take the footer out. And you have to take out all these colors. The bolds can stay, which I think is good because you want that to stand out. And then on the final version, you might have, oops. Something like that you have to include in the header. Like Smashwords requires something like this. And what I do is I keep a copy that is just for me, for editing. And I keep a copy that is for Smashwords that has all of these special editing that they require. Like the special header, the no colors, the no page numbers, thing like that. So I'll do, like boiling frogs, and like if I'm saving it, I'll save it like this. There's a plugin that'll allow you to do this, but I'm not fond of that plugin. Let's say like Something like that. That's how I'll name it. And what I do is each day that I'm working on this, I have just this particular, or I have this particular file name. So like if I come around tomorrow, which is the 6th, and I decide, okay, I'm going to work on this, I'll open the document, and then I will immediately come back and save it, and, change it to the 6th. And what that does is these documents, and this isn't so much now as it used to be, but it still happens, is you're going to go along and your text editor in whatever document editor you use is going to get a moment of stupid at some point, and it's going to destroy your document. I lost entire novels that way. The only thing that saved me was I had backups of them. But then I still lost a couple days worth of work because, I didn't have a backup that was newer than a couple of days earlier. So this is part of what I changed to correct that issue. Is I save a copy each day, and I'll save it with the date, and I do year, month, day, just because it sorts better that way. Because then when you look at the list, you're going to see your lists. This is going to come down in the order of, by year and date, and it'll literally be, sorted by date, and it sorts correctly this way. If you put the year over here, it sorts by month, and then you get stuff all mangled and mixed together, and you might have stuff from 2022, some from 2023, some from 2024, things like that. And if you put the day before the date, or you put the day all the way over here like they do in Europe, which I think is something like, it would be like 06, 09, 2023, or you have a date similar to that, where it's, it's September 6th, 2023, it's gonna really sort weird, because you're gonna have all your stuff that was on the 6th day of the month in one block, and then the 7th day of the month in one block, regardless of what month it was and stuff. So the other way that I do it is a simple way to sort and make sure it sorts alphabetically like it should. Well, alphabetically and numerically, but and I realize that Europe has a different way of doing it, and other countries have different ways of doing it, but for ease of sorting, to make sure you always have the oldest at the top and the newest at the bottom, that's what I do. And like I say, I found that to work really, really good. If you keep a notes file rather than a wiki like I do, which I started out with a notes file, which was just another document that had names and dates and other information about stuff, just little details about the story. I didn't start into the wiki until after I got published, and somebody actually recommended that to me because I was finding that my notes file was getting a little unwieldy, and I was having trouble sharing the information with other people, and wikis were becoming a big thing. So they was like, go to a wiki. I said, okay. And I've had 2 wikis before. The first one I built, fleshed it out, everything was perfect, and then, long story short, I lost the wiki. It went away, and it was a bad, really crushing data loss. But I managed to completely rebuild everything, and I've made sure I've got multiple copies of this thing so that if something fails, I don't go through that again, because that was soul crushing to lose the whole wiki. The good thing was I had kept my notes files, so I was able to rebuild stuff pretty quickly. Had to go back and read my own stories again to rebuild some parts of it, but I was able to rebuild my wiki. So definitely back up early and back up often. I like to do it like if I'm writing, if I've just finished a scene, or I've worked for 20 to 30 minutes. The systems nowadays will auto-save, but I still like to do a manual save about every 20 to 30 minutes. And I like to do daily backups of my drive, so that if my drive decides it wants to take a dirt nap, I still have backup copies, and the most I do is just lose that day's work, which is usually pretty easy to recreate, especially if you're editing. If you're editing, you can just go back there and re-edit stuff. You'll usually remember what you edited and changed. If you're creating new content, that sucks, because now you go back and remember what you did and create that new content. But again, you're not losing everything. You're not losing all your work, all your notes, all your other stuff. You're just losing that day's worth of work. One of the ways I achieve that is my backups. The redundancy on this is hilarious. I have a backup to a secondary drive, which then backs up to my NAS, or network attached storage, which is then backed up to a portable hard drive, which is then taken to an off-site location and stored there. So literally, somebody would have to nuke the state of Michigan to get rid of all my copies, and that doesn't count all the stuff I store online too. So literally, you'd have to probably nuke the world to get rid of all my manuscripts at this point. So that's, I kind of go overboard with that, but after the data loss experience from before, I kind of went into overkill mode to make sure that never happened again. So something you'll probably want to consider. But anyways, yeah, this is the general, how I write. How you want to write, that's up to you. I'm simply showing you how I write, how I build the stories. And one thing I do have to say is, when you're creating stuff, don't be afraid to change ideas. If you originally created an idea and you wrote the notes down for it and you start writing and realize it doesn't work, that's fine. If you start writing your story and the story tells you to take a right turn and it differs from your notes, fine, follow the story. The story will tell you what it needs to write. If the story starts going off, starts driving off into the ditch, yeah, steer it back onto the road. But in most cases, you want to just let the story tell its own tale, and you be the scribe. That's the best way I can describe it. You won't really understand that until you're actually writing and you start doing this full time, and you start, quote unquote, hearing the voice of that story telling itself. Because most good authors will tell you that they're not the author, they're the scribe. The story's the author. It's just how well do you listen to it. So anyways, yeah, we're at 42 minutes. I'm going to cut this off. Trying to figure out what else I want to talk about on this. I might have a friend of mine come in and tell you about publishing, because he's really good with publishing. He does all my artwork. He could really cover a lot, or he can cover a lot of the basics. I think he does it in like 1 to 2 hours. So you might have a lot to sit through, but he is just a cornucopia of information when it comes to publishing. And I still pick his brain on a lot of things. He does good artwork, so if you need a cover, definitely go to him. That's Don Zamora, who I mentioned in a previous video. And whatever you do, please don't stiff him. This guy is really, really good. Don't cheap out on the art. Don't get like super critiquey, because his stuff is good. If you start being a jerk, you're probably gonna get a boot up your butt from me, because the guy does really, really good art. And if people start getting all Karen on him because they want to be published by Disney and published by Random House and all this stuff, and I need to have a perfect cover and stuff, you start going like really postal like that, you're going against the idea of what it means to be a good author. Being a good author is not about being published and being famous. It's about writing the story and enjoying what you do. If you get published, great. If you get famous, great. But if you're not doing this because you love to do this, why are you doing this? Don't do it for the money. Don't do it for the fame. I've said that in other videos. I'll say it again. Don't do it for the money. Don't do it for the fame. Do it because you love it. And if you love it and you love it enough and you do it well enough, those other items will show up on their own. But don't do it strictly for that reason. But anyways, I've ranted enough. I will let you guys go, and I'll see you in the next video, whenever that happens to be, because I'm not sure what else I'm going to do right now, but I'll probably post some other stuff. I might start just posting updates on the writing, characters, where I'm going, and stuff like that. Just kind of like little progress updates at this point. So, again, if you guys have any questions, you want me to talk about something, please let me know. Thanks.